Why is it so hard to talk about money? It's part of everything we do. And sales is part of every transaction. Without money, nothing happens. The world doesn't go around. We're using it all the time. Why is it so hard to talk about? Let's talk about it. Pat McManamon joins us next on Purpose Under Pressure. Welcome back. My name is Brian. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about developing sales and leadership success on purpose and under pressure for you, for your team, for your organization. The show is brought to you by the professional sales and leadership training team at Sandler by the Ruby Group. They are located in Akron and Columbus, Ohio. They're in Jacksonville, Florida. They're in Capital Region, New York. They serve businesses across this country. They serve global businesses operating around the world. And they do their work on purpose so that you and your team can represent that way. If your people are out there setting expectations, making deals, building relationships, maybe ending relationships, right? You want it done on purpose. You want it done the right way. You want it done reflective of you, your leadership, your company, your team, and your people. That's why we love Sandler by the Ruby Group. It's what they do. And so I hope that you will connect with them online at therubygroup.sandler.com. The Ruby Group, developing stronger sales teams for tougher conversations. So let's get cooking and let's talk about one of the biggest pressure cookers in life, and definitely in sales. It's money. How much do you have? How much do they have? How much is it worth? In sales, the question always comes, do they have the budget? And of course, if you're selling, what's our budget? If you're buying, what's our budget? So let's talk budgets. Let's talk about it with Sandler by the Ruby Group senior partner and trainer, Pat McManamon. Pat, welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Thank you, Brian. Good to be here.
Why is it so hard to talk about money, and why is it so hard to figure out budgets?
Yeah, it's a age-old question that a lot of time we've come down to the thought that it's driven by scripts. Many of the things that we were raised on in our household. Some people were raised in an environment where money is a free speaking, free open conversation. It's not passé to talk about it. It's encouraged. Others, and I would say the majority of others is more of the money is a taboo conversation to have. And so you either just speak around it or we just don't address it at all. And I think that manifests itself in a selling situation. So we joke about, we've got our sales manager on one shoulder and our mother on the other. One is telling us to talk about money and the other's telling us it's impolite to talk about money, and we've got that conflict.
And there's two. Yeah, I remember very well. I remember my dad. Hey, we don't talk about money. We don't talk. And also I remember watching him not spend a dime. And so as a salesperson, I always had this idea. I don't think I have it anymore, but I had this idea that they can't afford this. That my stuff is too expensive. I always kind of outpriced the situation because in my family we couldn't afford things, and so of course they can't afford it either. Is that kind of what you're talking about, that attitude that we grew up with?
Yeah, exactly. And it's different for a lot of people. Most of it, like I said, is the majority of people do tend to fall in that bucket or that category where money was either scarce or money is not something to be discussed. A few had the opposite, which could be a good thing in sales, but also could make them insensitive to the fact that people need to process the investment associated with making a change.
Who's more uncomfortable talking about money? Is it the buyer or the seller?
Jeez. Yeah. That's a good question. I think if the salesperson is approaching the sales process in the right way and understanding that out of professional courtesy, they need to have this conversation. They owe it to the conversation, to the prospect to talk about money. Then that over time, they would get more comfortable. Yeah. The prospect, on the other hand, unfortunately has a negative outlook on most salespeople. Mm-hmm. And there's always a concern that they're going to overpay or get taken advantage of in the process. And so I think if I had to pick one based on your question, I'd have to say that the prospect. And we do a lot in sales with the Sandler sales program to talk about reading body language. And if we pay attention, most of our prospects are pretty comfortable over time of sharing what their issues are, what impact it's having on their business, maybe even what they've tried to do to fix it. But when we shift the conversation to talking about what it was going to cost, and I put that in quotation marks, to make the change, that's talking about budget and dollars and investment. That's when you see a shifting in their body language. They get a little bit more closed. They move in their chair, as we say, and they might show signs that this is not really an area I want to be discussing. Although it's deeply
it's always there
in the back of their mind of like, how much is this going to cost me to solve this problem I have, or these problems I have?
Yeah, that's right. They're always thinking about it. And so let's talk about this. What's the best way for a seller to take the pressure out of the room? Do we change the way we think about budgets? Do we talk about them earlier? Do we talk about them later? How do we get over that hump so that it's no longer this pressure-packed thing that's getting in the way?
Yeah, there's two specific things that I'd like to share related to that. First of all, it starts with the setup. When we start the conversation, is to give the prospect the assurance that we will, in fact, be discussing the budget. We will be, in fact, sharing what our potential solution would cost them, and also getting a sense for whether or not that's in the realm of possibility from their perspective. So giving that assurance on the front end is the key. And then also making sure that we do have that conversation at the appropriate time. Because if they haven't convinced themselves, and I'm specifically using that wording, if the prospect through our sales questioning hasn't convinced themselves that they have a compelling reason to change, then it doesn't really matter what our budget or what our investment would be to work with us, because they're not in a position where they're ready to move. If we have a viable conversation where they have illuminated their problems to themselves and to us, then it makes a lot more sense to discuss budget, because it's closely tied to the impact of the problem. Does that make sense? Oftentimes our prospects will come to us and say, before we get started, what's something like this cost? It's irrelevant, because something like this doesn't apply unless we're able to have a conversation about what it is that they're trying to fix, change, improve.
It doesn't matter what something costs if there's not a need on the other side. And it doesn't matter, perhaps, maybe you can expand upon this, it doesn't matter what something costs if I really need it.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't, if it's not something it's something I can afford, but I don't have a need for, it doesn't matter. But if it's something I don't have the ability to pay for, but I could justify it if it solves a problem that has a high enough return on investment, then I'll figure out a way to find it.
How does a salesperson change that mindset from what's this going to cost to do I need it, and make that seem more like an investment or a resource than a budget or an expense?
Yeah, and that comes with the sequence of the sales process, is that it's imperative that the conversation about what issues they're having, what challenges they're trying to fix, what they've tried to do, what impact it's having on their business is all discussed before we transition into a conversation about the investment associated with solving these problems.
Okay. Last question. Who should bring up budget first? Should the seller bring up the idea, like you said, we're going to talk about budget, but then when the buyer wants to know what it costs, if the seller says, I'm not going to tell you what it costs, like, how do you keep that conversation comfortable so that everybody feels good about talking about budget that's hard to talk about?
Yeah. Bringing it up first is best done by the salesperson in a very generic way. And that's in what we call the upfront contract, where we're setting the terms and conditions of the conversation. If we use an upfront contract, it actually reduces the pressure that the prospects feel oftentimes in a selling situation, because they don't know what's going to happen during the course of this conversation. Are we going to try and do a hard pressure close, are we going to try and, get them to buy something they don't want or need, et cetera, et cetera. And so telling them on the front end that we're going to have a conversation about whether or not you've got a problem that we believe we can fix. And if we do, which you may not, but if we do, then we will have a conversation about the investment associated with moving forward. So the key with this, Brian, and I want to share with the audience, is that one of the biggest mistakes we see with salespeople, sales organizations, is they wait until the proposal before they share anything associated with the budget. And that puts too much pressure on the prospect and puts too much pressure on the salesperson. So the idea is if there is a proposal coming, the salesperson should be able to look themselves in the mirror and say, the prospect will not be surprised by whatever numbers show up in my proposal or come up in my conversation once I'm ready to offer the total solution.
And so that looks something like, when we get back together again, I'm going to have a proposal for you. It will include pricing. That pricing could be anywhere from X to Y, but I'm going to have something that really makes sense for you. That takes the sting out, right? I'm anticipating something from X to Y. And as a salesperson, I don't want to go over Y unless I have to.
Yeah.
But I certainly don't want to come in under X, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. And no extra charge for this, but a power move associated with that is, after you share that range, is to then ask the prospect, should we stop?
That takes the pressure out, doesn't it? And it puts it in their place.
They say, no, that's in line with what we were thinking. Well, that's a little bit higher than what I was expecting. Okay.
But we can keep talking. And that leads me to my last question. I don't want to let you go without this, because I know you've got a lot of sales experience. This is a softball, knock it out of the park, Pat. Have you ever had a client tell you, I can't afford that. I don't have the budget. And then they spent twice as much.
Yeah, it happens when they think that it's a negotiation. And that's the key that we need to appreciate in this process, is that we need to, again, back to that upfront contract where we're setting the terms and conditions of the relationship, is that it should not be set up as an adversarial, you're on one side of the table and I'm on the other, but rather we're both trying to figure out together whether or not we should be working together. And that then takes away that holding their cards close to their chest, and in that cat and mouse game that oftentimes happens in more of the traditional sales approach. Not very effective, not very efficient for either party.
Yeah, I think that's what it's all about as we wrap up here. I think, Pat, is that good sellers and good buyers are trying to do the right thing for their organizations, for each other, trying to move things forward. If they can't do that together, that's okay. And if they can, let's do it. The money falls where the money falls. If it's worth it, we'll do it. If it's not worth it, or if I don't see the value, I won't do it. And that's not anything to get upset about. And it's not even really about money. It's about value and worth and investment. And if I want to, I will. And if I don't, I don't. And not too many people I know of have ever said no to something they really, really, really want. I mean, I'd like to have a Maserati. I don't really want one, right? Yeah. And so I don't care how expensive they are. But not too many people are driving without a car either. We figure out a way to afford what they need. And so that gets it done. So, Pat, thank you for sharing those stories on budget. Budget's not easy, is it?
No, it's a very common challenge that we get faced with from our sales clients.
And I think it's one of the most important things that sellers can learn from Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers, if you're out there and you can't figure out how to get to the money part, you can't figure out how to ask for the buy, you can't figure out how to say what it costs, you need some help. And I think that you should get that help. And I think you should get it from people like Pat and people like those at Sandler by the Ruby Group. Pat, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure, Brian. Appreciate it.
And folks, thank you too for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We do this every week, and we are so glad that you're here and that you come back. Please tell a friend, let them know. We want them to know this show is out there and worth listening, worth watching, and being a part and kind of growing on purpose together. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. The show is brought to you by the Ruby Group, developing stronger sales teams for tougher conversations like budget. Until next time, no matter how high the pressure gets, stay on purpose.